Hey, good evening guys. This is Q&A Sunday with me, Samuel Leeds, and I love to take an opportunity just to sit back, look at all the niggling property questions that you guys have and try and answer some as best I possibly can. So last week we had some really good questions as usual. We had Chamila Banuma Araki. I hope I pronounced that right, as always, struggling. Hi Samuel, what are the tools you would recommend to take when viewing properties, except a mandatory tape measure? The tools that I recommend taking when I do viewings. Do you know what? I don't really take anything. I don't even take a tape measure that often. I can pretty much measure a room with my feet because my foot is like a foot long and I just walk along the room. Sometimes take a tape measure because it looks professional, and I also like to just, if I'm talking with the vendor, I just pretend to measure stuff while talking and asking questions. It's like, it takes away from the confrontation a little bit. A notepad. Absolutely, although I'll usually use my phone. To be honest, you can go super prepared. When I used to go for viewings, it was like a big deal. Oh my gosh, I got a viewing. So I'd get a tape measure, I'd bring a little notebook and a pen, I'd bring comparables of all the other properties that sold in the street and all the research that I'd done on the house. I'd bring a camera and I'd take photos, and I'd spend like up to an hour in the house sometimes. But now, if I did that every time I viewed a house, I don't think I'd ever sleep, because I view that many houses. And I think the really important thing is, I always say this, the person that views the most houses wins. So rather than getting all the equipment and spending ages, I'd rather view 10 houses in one day and spend 10-15 minutes in each house than view 3 houses and spend an hour in each house. So I just get out there and view the houses. Also, relationships really important. I always say, again, it's better to have a good relationship with an agent than a good deal. So I'll just view loads of houses, get in with loads of agents. If the house isn't good and I don't like the house, rather than just leaving and not saying anything, I'll tell the agent, or maybe not the vendor, if it's the only house the vendor's got. But if it's with an agent, I'll tell them why I don't like it. I'll say, I don't like this house. This is why it doesn't work. 1, 2, 3. Have you got anything that could work for me? And it's just, I see it as an opportunity to build rapport and also to educate the agent. So I think the most important thing to take in there is your skill set, and your brain, your experience, your ability to speak to people. That's the most important thing you can bring to a viewing, rather than special tools and equipment. I don't do it. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see what else we got. Guest 12345, who says, hey Samuel, how do you find builders or contractors in different areas around the UK to renovate or refurbish your properties? Great question. Builders are tricky, because even if you find a good builder, they might be good for a bit and then turn bad. Because what builders do when they get busy is they either get really sloppy, or they try and replace themselves and grow their team and bring other builders in, but the other builder might not be good, but they are. So even if you've got a good builder, lesson number 1, a good builder for life, in my experience, doesn't exist. They'll be good for a bit, and then just when you begin to trust them enough to not have to project manage them, they'll then turn bad. And how do you find a good one in the first place? I usually find good builders by referrals. So if I'm moving into a new area, I'll go to Facebook and I'll ask, hey, I'm looking for a builder in such and such an area. Can anyone recommend anybody? Sometimes I'll take builders with me. So if I've got builders who are based in Birmingham and I'm doing a job in Coventry, which is maybe 40 minutes away, I'll just ask them to travel and pay them a little bit more, because I'd rather have someone good on the job and pay slightly more for their travel than find a whole new building team or a new builder. Facebook's a good way. Also networking. Go to property networking events and in the area and say, I've got some projects. Very rarely do I just start ringing up people off Yellow Pages. I mean, it's always referrals. And then another thing as well, when you have a builder, make sure that you don't pay them up front. When I hear people they say, oh, I got screwed over by my builder. The only reason you got screwed over was because you were irresponsible, because you paid up front. Most people that say they got screwed over by the builder set the builder up to screw them over. So don't pay up front. You can pay a little bit up front. If they're doing like a £20,000 refurb, you can pay maybe £3,000 up front. and then they get started and then pay it in stages. So that's also really important. And make sure that someone, it doesn't have to be you, but make sure when there's builders on site doing work, someone is checking up on them, because if you leave them to it, no matter how good they are, human nature, they're not going to do as good of a job if no one's there checking up on them. So that's kind of generally what I do with builders. I'll do a video at some point. I'll do a video of me going out there finding builders and working with them. So on maybe a TV Tuesday for sure. Salim Imram says, how do I know if an area is oversaturated? And how do I know which areas are the best to invest in? Okay, ask people. Ask people that know the answer. So if it's oversaturated with, I assume you mean investors trying to rent their houses out. Therefore, there's not a shortage of houses to rent. That's usually what people mean when they say oversaturated. So if you're wanting to buy a house and turn it into a HMO, but there's loads of people buying houses and turning them into HMOs in that area, every man and his dog, and there's thousands of rooms, then that could be oversaturated for HMOs. If it's oversaturated for single lets, it's not usually, I mean, the price will just come down a little bit. I always say everything will rent out at the right price. You just need to figure out what the right price is. So if it's oversaturated, ask people, ring up letting agents, ring up investors in the area, ring up HMO management companies if it's HMO, and just say to them, you know, what's the market like? What are the best streets in this city? What would you rent out in a week, and what could take months? And they'll usually just tell you. And never buy a property off one person's say so. Always remember that everyone's always got an agenda. You just need to figure out what their agenda is. So sometimes when I ring up letting agents, I'll ring them as a tenant and say, you know, hey, I'm looking for a property to rent. What's going down? What you got? How much would you be looking for? What are the best areas? I'm not from town. And you'll find that they'll be very, very honest with you. You don't want to waste people's time, but if you're genuinely looking to buy in the area and you are genuinely wanting to buy and you'll need a letting agent, then that's just called market research. So another thing you can do is put up a dummy ad. So on places like Open Rent, you can put adverts, and spareroom.co.uk. If it's HMO, you can put up adverts. Again, you don't want to waste people's time. So if you put up a dummy ad on Spareroom and someone phones you and says, "Oh, I'm looking for your room," you know, don't just go, "Haha, it was a test," or "Oh, it's gone," and then waste their time. What I would do is if someone rang me and said, "Oh, I saw your advert," I would say, "This one's not ready yet / doesn't exist, but let me put you in touch with someone who has a similar room," and then pass the inquiries over. Then you've got a new best friend over here, because this landlord is going to be like, "Oh, thanks for passing all," and then that's always good, because relationships are always better than a deal. So these are some ways that you can do your market research. In regards to what are the best areas, depends on your strategy. If you're looking at doing a straightforward buy to rent, buy to let, buy low, rent high. You know, you're going to get a much better return working in an area whereby house prices are cheaper but the rents are the same, because there's no direct correlation between the house price and the rent. So you want to find somewhere where you can buy it low, rent it high. Whole lot of areas, but hopefully that was helpful. Kieran Schwa. Okay, Samuel, you say you don't buy where you live, but getting a buy-to-let mortgage for a first-time buyer is next to impossible. How do we as first-time buyers get around that? Great question. Firstly, it's not impossible, it's very possible. A lot of my students are buying properties and renting their houses out, and they don't even own a house. They're not a residential owner at all. So it's very, very possible. You need a good broker. I've had a lot of people challenge me on this, and I'll hold true to what I said, which is rent where you live and rent out what you own. So in other words, be a tenant yourself, but then just have lots of other tenants. I'll stand by that, generally speaking. Unless you are, one, in a situation in life where you've got so much money and you just love a house and you're buying your dream house and you know that commercially it's probably not the best thing to do, but you just want to live in that house forever and you've got the money to buy it and it doesn't matter because you're already financially free, no problem. Or, sometimes people have said to me, they don't own anything and they've got a little bit of money and they say, "Samuel, it works out better for me to buy a residential house and live in it than to buy a buy-to-let. And sometimes it's true, because you can put down such a small deposit and you can also get yourself up on the ladder, ready to buy better type of deals. So sometimes it can work out better to buy a house for yourself. What I'm really against is people working really hard, saving up, and then getting 50 grand and then dumping it into a house to live in, when they could have used that money to buy a buy-to-let or buy 3 buy-to-lets, and then the rent that they receive, rent where they live in a better house, have excess income. I'm really against that. But occasionally, if your big picture is, I want to be financially free, and you have done the numbers, and you're confident that buying a house to live in is going to get you faster to financial freedom than buying a house to buy-to-let, then fine. But 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. We need to move away from this having to own everything. You can live a really good life and rent stuff. You don't have to own everything. So broke people say, you know, I've got to own my house and pay off the mortgage as quickly as possible. Rich people say, I want to own assets, and then with those assets, live a really good life. So hope that was helpful. If you've got questions, no matter how specific and pointed and niggly they are, comment below. Get your comments and questions below, and I'll choose out at least 4 to answer for next week. And I hope you found that helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the next video. We do videos every day, man. Every day I'm doing a video, so you better subscribe, because the more subscribers, the more views, the more comments, the more likes, the more effort I'll put into doing these, because I know more people are watching. So subscribe. I'll see you next time.